Hello, my precious Homo sapiens. Okay, we got a big one today. We are going to talk about the how the instinctual core is what makes us not be able to stick to the nutritious diet that we want to be eating. Okay. Now, for those of you who don't know what the instinctual core is, don't know what the instinct center is, don't know what the IC solution is, I'm going to give you a real quick recap. And forgive me because I just started making these videos and I still suck in making these videos and I feel totally uncomfortable and it makes me so scared to talk to the camera. But I'm going to go through it anyway. Right now, I got to throw up on screen the little uh, thing we're going to talk about. I'm going to share my screen. Boom. Okay. Move my head front and center. My beautiful head. My polished, beautiful head. Okay. So this is at the core of the IC solution. We got this default perspective that we're all born with, that we are all the thoughts and all the emotions, all the toxic thoughts and toxic emotions that go on in our head, the contradictory thoughts and contradictory emotions that go on in our head. And so that's this perspective, and also which leads to the toxic behaviors that we carry out because of those toxic thoughts and emotions. It's all us. We feel like it's everything that happens is us. The IC perspective is trying out something new where you are your consciousness along with your conscious self. That's it. Then there's a whole bunch of things going on in the subconscious brain, which those of you who are familiar with economic behavioral economics, probably not. We're really considering more what they call the system one brain, this thing that puts us in autopilot 90% of the time. But then there's the instinctual core that's directly connected to the subconscious brain, that's putting in a whole set of directives, a whole different agenda than what we want. And it's all about survival, but it was made for a primitive, prehistoric world, a world of 30,000 years ago, a world that doesn't exist today. It does not know how to operate in this world. It worked incredibly effective back then, but it's super dumb and it doesn't know how to adapt to this world. That's the core, okay? And you see, let me click on that one to move to the next screen. You know, for me, like I had severe alcoholism until I took on this perspective. And when I had this brain over here, I would always be saying, I'm never going to drink. It's going to kill me. I can't pick up a bottle. I don't want to do it. It's going to ruin my life. But then there was this other part of me that was saying, go get a drink. You're a piece of crap. Drink, 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 nonstop, thousands of times a day. It was almost more important than breathing to this guy. But then when I realized that that guy isn't me at all, that guy is this guy doing that for specific reasons to actually try and save our life, I was able to start to train it like a little puppy in one way. Today, I'm going to talk about how that same thing exists, and it is very extreme with nutrition in today's world as compared to the world of 30,000 years ago. So let me escape from that and show you. Here is the Instinct Center where I'm tracking all the goals that I'm working on, the overriding decisions that that brain that you saw at the head, that consciousness, my consciousness along with my conscious brain is I get to make the overriding decisions. And everything else that the instinctual core has put into that subconscious ain't real. It's wrong. And I'm allowed to question anything. This solution allows you to open up to the idea that all that stuff, all your beliefs, all the things going on in your subconscious brain might not be yours at all. Okay? And one of them is with nutrition. Like, okay, because it's basically really simple. Popping up this diagram again. Think about nutrition. What the instinctual core is made to gets us hungry, sends us hunger, but also sends us delicious and pleasure when we eat this deliciousness, all sorts of chemicals. I don't get into the science behind it. This is the simplification of science that we can understand. It sends us pleasure when we eat delicious. And what is delicious in the world of 30,000 years ago? Salty things, which were your proteins, fatty things, which also the proteins, salty things. And again, sorry for rambling. I'm a lot of ums and blah. But yeah, I'm going to get better at this. The sweet things, your fruits and your veggies and your berries and whatnot. everything that it programmed in was magical, wonderful, life-giving stuff. Today's world, there's a whole bunch of scientists and engineers doing a fantastic job of making things specifically for the instinctual core much more delicious than anything nature can make, and also happens to be totally poisonous to us. It is literally poisoning our body, taking decades off our life, and then we've got to go eat a bunch of pharmaceuticals so that we blah blah. This all the food is killing me, so let me take a bunch of drugs to make me better. I mean, what if it didn't work like that? What if we were able to reset and say, screw delicious. Delicious ain't right anymore. And that's what we can do. And some of you may be thinking, but Roger, delicious is delicious. It's part of me. It's not part of you. It's something that's it's a mix of chemicals that tells you. And you can just start saying, hey, look, a pear is delicious, but sweetie, tart, pear, juicy juices, they're not. They're poison. And you can start looking at it like a chemical mix. It's like, why am I letting that poison me? If I can just get over that signal that's coming up to me that that's delicious, I could live an extra 20 years. Literally, if you're eating junk all your life, on average, I'm guessing, you lose about 20 years of your life. Or at least the healthy part of your life. Okay, don't quote me on that, please. But it kills it. A lot of our foods are just straight up poisonous. Everything you find in the pantry. Okay, so how do we operate this? How do we see when it's happening? And don't worry, we've created a system for this. Okay, so moving back here, I'm tracking overcome unhealthy nutrition. This is one of my goals at the IC Goal Tracker, and I've just started. I've been doing it for many years, but I've just got the IC Goal Tracker live where anyone, and this can support all of you, a system where we all can be working on our goals together. Right now, I'm doing this alone, and I am very looking forward to being joined by everyone who wants to make significant change and haven't found a way to do that. Okay, but what I'm going to show you today is the radar and roar. Radar is a system that allows you to recall that you are going to be separate from your instinctual core, and then it allows you to investigate if certain things are the instinctual core trying to pressure you into things. So let me show you how that works. Okay, so I'm going to click radar. No, that was a radar quick catch. Radar quick catch is when you get really good at radar and you can do it in your head in a few seconds. I'm going to click on the radar, and it takes us over to the actual process of ROAR. It's an acronym: recognize, ask, dissect, aha, reassign. Okay, I'm going to expand it to big E head. Okay, and when you click it from the IC Goal Tracker, you could also go to IC Interactive app and get to one. But when you click it from the Goal Tracker, it actually puts in the overcome unhealthy nutrition, because whenever you're doing a radar, you want to be working on one of your overriding decisions, realizing that this is the one truth and all the other nonsense is nonsense. The first step, recognize. Okay, at the and what the recognize is to not to recognize the instinctual core yet, is to recognize all the complex thoughts and emotions that are going on inside of your head and break them down to these 9 things. And there's a whole bunch of science to how I came up with these 9 things. But everything can be basically broken down to these basic innate emotions and these innate thoughts, and a kind of combination of them with cravings and stress in between them. Okay, so upon identification, so at the core of every issue, there's an unwanted reaction within you, and that unwanted reaction is that thing that says, go get a nacho, go get a cupcake, go get some diet sodas, go get blah, 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 right? So much junk, you can't even talk about it. And so I'm going to say, like, I've been doing this a lot of times, you know, I've locked in never drinking alcohol again, thanks to this IC solution. But because we have to eat every day, and because it's so plentiful and so easy to eat the wrong things, I'm almost like an addict when it comes to, if I start to slip, I go down the wrong train. I'm just not good in moderation ever since I became a full-blown alcoholic. And I don't even like the term, fully blown addicted to something. So for me, I just don't want to eat it at all. but I still notice things like now that I'm just on day 3, I've done it for when I started not drinking, I ate perfect for years. But now I keep on getting onto like these streaks of a few months, and then I kind of give in, and then got 3 kids at home, drunk everywhere. And I'm just like, screw it. It's not killing me like alcohol. But I don't want to live that life anymore. And now that I have the Icy Goal Tracker, I'm committing to you because I'm kind of doing this to have accountability to myself while trying to teach you about it as well. So let's say Diet Coke is kind of my gateway food to start slipping into things. So just I was in a store, in every store, in every store, seeing the Diet Coke stand or just the Coca-Cola stand. No offense, Coca-Cola. A lot of people work at Coca-Cola in my neighborhood here in the greater Atlanta. But I think, there's some things that don't make that too great for us if we eat it, if we drink it in excess. Uh, stand. Okay. So now there's just the straight up the unwanted internal reaction. It's the cravings. It's I'm sorry, the cravings that are going on inside of me. There's these demands and judgments are not. You can make demands and judgments, but the instinctual core and your subconscious brain make snap demands, snap judgments. They work a lot quicker than you do, and you can hear it say, "Judgment. I want that Diet Coke. Demand. Go get it. Purchase it." But then that's just the basic on the physiological level. But then there's also emotional eating and drinking and eating. But where there's just a complex mix of emotions, all of these. And I'm just going to go through a full-on example. It's like when you have fear and doubt and food is that coping mechanism. And that fear, sometimes it's your frustration, anger, sometimes it's the hate you have towards something. You just need to settle it down. And the sadness, like saying food can be a downward spiral. You have sadness because you've eaten too much, and you eat too much because, did I say that right? You have sadness because you eat too much, and you eat too much because you're sad. So, and I've been in all of these cases, but much more so with alcohol. And then a combination of too many of these fires going off, stress. So it could be all these things. So I'm giving you a full-on blown thing, but I'm not talking about the instinctual core. I'm just noting these things, not talking about the instinctual core yet. And let's say I'm doing well with it because I've done it before a lot of times. And when I'm in stride, I can do great, but I'm just going to show an example of intensity of 8. Can you identify the trigger that input? Yes. I'm sorry. I mix this up because I kind of do it on, right? This is the trigger. Boom. And the unwanted internal reaction is just a desire for junk food. Okay. And then, so now we've recognized what's going on before we've opened up this is when all our thoughts and our emotions are us. We just have this part highlighted, but now we move on to next. And you see, ask is a very important step because this is reminding when you're participating in the IC solution at the Instinct Center, you're participating in an experiment to see yourself as separate from your subconscious and that instinctual core that's programming a bunch of things in there. Okay? Because, I mean, it's there for our survival, but it doesn't work in this world. So, and it's the ask thing reminds you of that constantly every time you go through the radar process because it's a totally different perspective, a totally different way of thinking about things, and repetition is the best way to remember that. So you know that you did not create or decide to have this toxic internal reaction, but something did. Think about that. Did you decide to have a craving for junk food? No. It was probably programmed in when you got that first candy bar when you were 3 years old. It's like, oh, yeah, this is delicious. What is delicious is a combination of things, but it's really the instinctual core saying, get more of that because that's going to save your life. Because the sweetest things around at the time, 30,000 years ago, were going to save your life. Now it doesn't. So are we ready to try and find out? Are we ready to dissect if it's the instinctual core that's acting up? And that is when your world opens up from just you and all your internal thoughts and emotions to the possibility that maybe it's being caused by something else, the instinctual core. That's the instinctual core down here. This is your user's guide to dissect every single way that the instinctual core works. And a lot of times we think, oh, the instinctual core, which is that primitive reactive brain. I'm using the term instinctual core. That's kind of the term that we use, but people call this kind of the primitive reactive brain is doing, and we generally we know that it's the thing that gets us to jump out of the way of the bus or jump out of the way of the chasing tiger. But it does so much more than that because we're a social complex species, and it's doing a whole bunch of other things that go beyond just immediate threats. And it works on all these different layers to keep you alive in the world of 30,000 years ago. But it's still doing that, and a lot of these different layers don't work anymore. Okay, so this is all inputs that are coming through all your senses. And because they're coming through at the bottom and passing through all these guys, because remember, the instinctual core and the system one brain, or what we're calling the subconscious brain, is a lot faster than you. It gets first choice, but you have a chance to stop it. Sometimes you won't, like when you swat that frisbee that's flying out of nowhere. You want it to do that, but most of the time it'll try and influence you, and then you have time to say, okay, do we really want to pick up that bottle of vodka at the liquor store down the road? And then that's when you have time to process. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to show you a bunch of different examples of why the instinctual core is trying to get me to drink. But the first one, not drink, to eat. We're talking about diet here. And the first one is physiological. And that's when that's when I was just talking about the cravings, because you get hungry and you want that delicious, the demands. And so it wants to move you to pleasure, to wipe out all that demands. And that is in the example of attaining the treat, because the instinctual core does just three things, can summarize every single thing it does to three different things. And that is, I'm going to move him over here. He's kind of blocking me a little. Him, that's me. The instinctual core does three things. It tries to attain the treat, it tries to avoid the threat, and it tries to defeat the threat. Everything can be broken down, and these are the survival threats, avoiding the survival threat, attaining the survival treat. But it's still doing that even in this world where none of these things are actually related to your survival. Attaining that nacho is not going to help you survive, okay? But when you do that, it sends you the pleasure, which I'm not going to be when you get the pleasure. These things go away when you get that, when you put that nacho in, but because it thinks it's saving your life. Okay, so we're going to get rid of that guy. But then there's also emotional eating. When you're living in a world, what you think is this high stress world, it's the instinctual core causing a bunch of stress. Like say work stress, say you have work stress. That's because the instinctual core thinks that your survival, and I'm not talking, I know you make money at your job, which helps you pay the bills. But the instinctual core says, if you lose this job, you are dead now. It believes it. That's why it for so many of us, our work stress is so high when there's not really a life at stake. I know so many people that have lost their jobs, been fired, and ended up much better off in a few months because they were trapped in a job they hated anyway. So when we start to rethink things like that, we get rid of this fear and this anger. When we start to look at that sadness that's being sent to us as a trick from the instinctual core to get more food, we can start to overcome it because we're separated from it. We can start to see it as a little puppy saying, no, little buddy, we don't need to be sad because we've eaten that food. And we can just stop reacting to that sadness. Okay, millions of examples I'm kind of going through them all. But there's also what we call reward confusion. And that's that example where I was talking about like work stress, for example, where at work, you want to work to defeat the threat, outdo the competitor, outdo your fellow workers to get that promotion, or to run from a threat, Oh, I messed up. I'm going to try and avoid being part of this. I need to fix it. I need to avoid this threat somehow. Whatever. Literally so many examples. That's why this user's guide is so diverse. Okay, now, but you can't fix all those little fires that are going off. But the IC has reward confusion. It doesn't care if it gives you a reward for defeating the threat or avoiding the threat, because it's just as happy to send you pleasure if you attain the treat. So these things are going off, creating an emotional chaos in your head, and then it goes to attain the treat, wiping all this stuff out momentarily until it comes back stronger the next time. Did I do a good job of explaining that? Remember, it's day 3. I know I kind of went over and around. But when these threats were happening, those are happening on the safety layer because you need that money, you need that paycheck, on the pecking order layer because you got to prove yourself to the tribe, on the belonging layer because you've got to be loved, because the IC, I shouldn't have been saying the IC, the instinctual core, needs to be loved. 30,000 years ago, it needed to belong. Otherwise, it could mean death. If you didn't have your tribe, you're dead back then. But here in this world, there's so many different possibilities of tribes. And then the overall IC evaluation comes into play where you think your IC is telling you you're failing at the physiological because you're not getting you can't eat at the fanciest restaurant. You're failing at the safety because you're not a billionaire, which is constantly thrown in our face. You're failing at belonging because you're not loved like the celebrities we see. You're failing at the pecking order because you walk into a gym and see someone stronger than you. You're failing IC evaluation. You're failing at everything. I hate you. Stop sucking. And then manageability is when there's so many of these fires going off that are all bullshit, and that manageability leads to just stress because we think the IC is telling us we're failing everywhere. Okay, way overboard because I showed you every single example, but are these things actually threats? Are we going to die if we don't achieve these things? Hell no, we are not. And that's where we come to this realization. Aha! We've been hijacked. We are literally hijacked. That work stress, the feeling that we're a piece of crap because we're not the billionaires, we're not the celebrities, we're not everything we see on the web, on the social media. We don't have 100,000 likes, and so the instinctual core, it only compares. Its job used to be comparing us to our tribe, about 100 people. Now it's comparing us against 80 billion people, and of course we suck against 80 billion people because even if we're awesome, there's still about 1 billion people better than us in a bunch of things. So it's got us stuck in so many impossible traps. But once you see that, once you say, hey, and it puts you in those traps because when you were competing against your tribe, you had to do well against just 100 people just to survive. Now you don't have to do well against 8 billion people. And in fact, if you worry about doing well against 8 billion people, you're going to be in such a state of stress and such need for pleasure. You're going to be totally hijacked. Jump out of those traps. All right. And then that's when we look, aha, I'm in a trap. I'm being hijacked by the instinctual core and it's telling me a bunch of lies. And it's telling me to go eat that food to get out of the bunch of lies. So when we have that aha moment, these different ahas are about ingraining the aha further and further into your head and gaining back more of your subconscious. The activation aha. I see this activation. I see that there's been alarms set off to save my life that aren't alarms at all. They're totally false. I don't need them. I don't need to pay attention to those. They're helping me from being caught up in all of this nonsense, this fear and this doubt that it's sending me is killing me. It's not helping me. So I'm going to start to learn how to let it pass through. The reactions it's being set off, the fear, the anger, the hate, the sadness, the stress, the cravings, the demands, all bullshit. You can start to see that when you start to see that as separate from you and you are up here, it's down here sending you these signals. It's like a puppy barking, barking, barking. But as soon as you start to say, no, puppy, we're not following your orders anymore, you can start to let these things, you're still going to have these instinctual reactions, But when you don't pay attention to them, when you don't let them consume you, they start to decrease. And then the external reaction, oh my gosh, I'm worried so much about stressing out of the job. I'm not doing good at my job because I'm spending all my time panicking. And I'm worried about getting this treat, but because the instinctual core is telling me that delicious and hunger is necessary to save my life. Most of the time, we're not even experiencing actual hunger. We're experiencing what we call appetite. That's when, like, at around 10 o'clock in the morning, you're like, oh, my stomach. Real hunger happens around a week in, when you like, it's sending you extra energy to make sure you catch that next buffalo. Okay, so that's none of it is real. Delicious isn't real anymore. We have to start. When I'm doing this, I think about food like, okay, I see it as something made by nature, and how awesome is that nature makes us the perfect food. Okay, and then life. We're letting being stuck in this trap make us absolutely miserable until we get that immediate gratification, that pleasure, keeping us from any chance of happiness. Pleasure is not happiness. It's immediate gratification. You're happy for a few seconds, then it says, now go get more. Okay, and then just the logic of it all, just to see the whole step back and see, holy crap, I'm stuck in a trap. And I can get out if I stop following the orders. And then you can start to question a lot of beliefs. You don't need to check off every single one of these every single time. And a radar, by the way, this radar, I'm 26 minutes in. Radars, I now do them in my head in like 5 seconds. So I'm just going into a lot of detail because there's so much here. But once you get yours down, I'm kind of going through a lot of different examples. But when you come to the IC investigative meetups and see other people going through their specific examples, you're going to start to see how the IC works in you. Okay, so cool. Next. Okay, so a lot of times, especially with this food thing, right? Just remember, let's forget about all the work stress and all the different sadness and all the different places you've got anxiety going on or depression going on. Let's just think of it in the purest form, where it's just cravings and demands. And we're just going to learn how to let that pass through us. We're going to learn to see that barking as not ourselves, as a puppy barking separately that just happens to be in our head. And we're going to pet it on the head and say, I got you, buddy. But remember, that's not really helping us survive. I'm not going to do that. And no matter how much you ask, you can keep on screaming. But after a little while, after a few minutes, it's going to settle down and say, okay, I got it. We're not doing that this time. And I use this puppy example. It's like that puppy that wants to sleep in your bed and keeps on barking because it knows you're eventually going to give in. But once you stop giving in, within about 3 days, that puppy says, oh, I can't get on that bed anymore. And it takes off and it's totally happy sleeping in its own bed. That's the same thing with the instinctual core. It's going to keep on, instead of getting louder and louder, when you thought it was you, especially for me with alcohol, it kept on getting louder and louder and louder and more intense. And I could never make it 6 months of sobriety because it just was screaming nonstop and eventually I had to fold. But then when I realized that screaming was from the instinctual core and the complete hijacking of the subconscious that it had, it went away so quick. I struggled for 8 years until I realized this. And then I've developed it for another 8 years so all of you can realize it. Okay, so this is the pass-through where we just let it get quieter and quieter by saying, good, I hear ya. Let's just move on. But then there's the other example, the one we're going to move on, because with food, you have to eat something, right? Okay, so I'm going to show you by moving on to the roar process next about how, what we're going to do, because with food, unlike with alcohol, well, there was a lot of things I had to do with alcohol to get rid of the reason I was feeling stress, okay? And the reason I was miserable and the reason why I thought I was a piece of shit is because the instinctual core kept on yelling. But for this case, we're going to move on to the human path. And this is where we start to handle food in a whole new way. Okay, so yeah, I said a lot, but there's so much more I can say. But I'm gonna go ahead and move on. Um, and kind of with food, you could move on to replacement. In fact, I think I'm gonna do that for this case. Instead of moving on to a roar with food, I'm gonna move to a replacement. Because you could do that right here. Because the instinctual event of hunger is still gonna happen. Like with that, the instinctual event that tells me to get alcohol, I don't need to, I need to stop the request for alcohols. But the instinctual event of food, you still need to eat food. Um, just you got to start looking at it in a new way. You got to start looking at food as something on the higher human levels. And it starts with, I'm going to start with self-improvement because food should be about putting fuel in your body to make it better. And that's the way I look at food. I don't, for me, I know for some people, they still want it to be delicious. I've stopped wanting it to be delicious. I know that if it doesn't taste that great, it's probably a lot healthier for me. And I make whatever is the healthiest things. And I go out of my way. And when it tastes like crap, I'm like, okay, that's awesome. But I know a lot of you have a very refined, wonderful a palate. And that's where you can learn to get intrigued. How can I make healthy food totally delicious? That's a mark of intrigue. And then appreciation. For me, this is very important. Like when I talk about that pear, when I bite into that pear, I'm like, oh my gosh, this thing somehow grew out of a seed that fell to the ground, went into the dirt, grew up from nutrients in the dirt, bringing up water through the tree, branching out to all these branches, sending them out into leaves, and these places where somehow fruits grow and make more seeds inside them, by the way, so they can make more of them, and make this thing that's perfectly made by nature, that is absolutely delicious. And then I think about that in comparison to eating some junk ass cupcake and all the chemicals that I don't know about that are in there that you can read on the label, all these things you don't even know exist that are somehow there to make it preserve. A lot of them are make it extremely delicious. A lot of them are to make it preserve longer on your shelf and to make it as cheaply and mass produced as possible. That ain't delicious. That's poison, right? Okay, and then you don't need to click off on all of these. And by the way, if you were going through the ROAR experiment, this is kind of what you do. But ROAR has more steps, and we'll get into that for other things. But I think replacement is a really good idea for this one because we're still having that hunger and we're still having that need for delicious. And then we'll still get our pleasure. Pleasure will get, oh, we can't click pleasure here because, but you would be, you'll see why. When the instinctual core start to see that you're doing the right thing for your self-improvement and eating and enjoying it the way you like it, it's going to start sending you pleasure for working in a growth model rather than the model it had you on is go get junk, feel miserable, go get more, go get more, go get more, and downward spiral. Now you're eating things that make you better. And the engagement side of it is when you're actually have that delicious meal that you made or the crappy meal, the non-delicious meal that I made, just fully engaged in eating it. But engagement is one of the greatest things that we can accomplish. But it's like it totally applies with food. I was going to say it doesn't, but engagement I talk more about when we're trying to start something new is when we get fully engaged, get in the flow. You heard about the flow. It's when we're at our happiest. And I'm not going into that right now, but engaging is when you got that perfect meal you have, sit down with family and friends, eating a healthy meal. What could be better? Okay, so that brings us to the next. And okay, so what we have here, before you are fully done with the radar process, and you see, and we're not doing a roar like I originally said, you see you've gone from here to having this desperate desire to eat that junk food to here, where you're still satisfying the instinctual core by giving it the food, but now you're happy that you're doing it the right way through the layers of human happiness. And yeah, you see where I'm coming from? Do you see the power in this? Okay. But last step here is, say this is more for like when we've satisfied our need by eating in this one. But say this was more like me drinking. I still have that instinctual reaction that just doesn't stop when it says, go get that drink. Or it's like cigarettes, go get that cigarette. Sometimes you just got to sit through that. And it's so interesting to learn that these demands at the instinctual core are not nonstop. It will not continue to go on. You can watch it and say, oh yeah, I feel a little bit of a thing in my belly that says I should eat, but it doesn't hurt. It's just kind of there. I see that craving for delicious. Yeah, satisfying it is poisoning myself. And you just kind of say, oh yeah, I can totally deal with this. I don't need it to demand. And you'll see the level totally decrease, and you watch it. And this kind of, meditation, mindfulness, all that, blah, blah, wonderful stuff. It works. It just watch it. Watch it happen and let it pass through. And the pass through is when we had the one going here and just watching it, let it pass through. Not letting that puppy bark until it gets sick of barking and realizes you aren't going to get it. Each event is about 3 minutes long, but over a couple weeks, that bark that got louder and louder and louder before is going to get to nothing. For me, drinking used to be the loudest bark on earth, and it was non-stop. Literally, I thought about it 7,000 times a day. Today, I'll see a liquor store, not think about anything. Maybe once a month at a party, there'll be a drink there. I'm like, what if I drank that? Boom, psh, vanished. It is such a small whisper that it doesn't have a chance anymore. Okay, so there we go. I hope this was helpful. Let's move on to this beautiful little closing I'm creating. Oh, wait, let's not move on yet. Finally, make sure you hit the submit and save at the end after you get your intensity lever before 2, and it added to your stats, and it started, so you've started to gain your subconscious back a little more each time you do this. In closing, I just wanted to say that I developed the IC solution in a complete state of desperation. I tried everything out there to quit drinking, and I was on a downward spiral with the finish line of death until I found the first inklings of the IC solution. And I've developed it for many years to help it have the same result to so many people out there that are suffering. Please help me reach as many people as I can by liking and subscribing to this video. And if you're ready to start making changes for yourself, please come visit us at the Instinct Center and start to try out the separation from your instinctual core and join us in the IC investigation meetups and start your own overriding decisions of your own. I can't wait to have you. It's all for free for the time being, and I'm really looking forward to meeting you. See you soon.